Hi, this is Tim coming to you with something new, the recently released Louis Vuitton Tambour. Now, before I present these watches, let me just advise you that they are pre-production prototypes of very high quality, but while good, the finished article that you get at the store will be great, so just keep that in mind. For 2023, we have a new Tambour line, as you can see right here in stainless steel, combination of integrated bracelet, the first ever for the Tambour line, and a couple of different dial colors, and we're going to talk a little bit about the detailed differences, but it's important to note that these watches are dimensionally identical, and we'll talk about those specifically in a second. The Tambour originally launched in 2002. It's the sort of start point for modern Louis Vuitton watchmaking. Though the luxury major has been building watches for decades, its watchmaking in earnest started in 2002 with the Tambour model. Tambour, French for drum, is not just the name, it is the touchstone for the design of these watches. We'll go over some of the dimensions and the drum-like features of the cases. Let's take one in hand and we'll get a quick look at how it fits. Now you can see 40 millimeters in diameter. As I measure it, 8.6 millimeters thick, and then there are two different ways to measure a distance across the wrist here, because you can see that it is a lugless design. The bracelet mates with the bottom of the case is completely round. So measured from the first link side to side, the distance across the wrist is 44 millimeters. Now if we measure from the second link side to side, which I find to be a bit more helpful as a fit guide, then the distance across the wrist is 51.6 millimeters. So the watch wears fairly true to size. Just keep in mind that there is a little bit of rigidity engineered into the bracelet. Now the bracelet is a first for the Tambour collection and for Louis Vuitton, fully integrated, and as you will note, it's got some details that you can tease out with close examination. First, you can see the intermediates are polished. The profile is entirely tapered. There is a shoulder bevel that runs perfectly aligned from link to link as we go down toward the clasp. In profile, you can see satination, and pins and sleeves have been used for sizing. The cross sections of the links are really tiny, so you're going to get a good fit here with many small removable links. You're going to be able to fine tune this easily. Now, because it is a pin sleeve system, you're going to need a block and punch if you want to size this yourself. Of course, this also has some advantages over screws in that these are less likely to back out than screws often are on bracelets. And perhaps more importantly, small diameter flathead screws tend to strip out, whereas with pin sleeve setups like this, you have absolutely no chance of that happening. Now we have a three-part folding clasp, which is very low in profile. When you take a look at it closed, it's super slim. We have the Louis Vuitton corporate marquee right there. It is friction fit, snap shut, and then because it is a double fold deployment, it's less likely to pinch a small wrist than the one big up and over single fold designs you often see. And the watch, as we roll back around to the case, transitions from clasp to bracelet back to that tambour-like case. And there's a lot of nuance here. First, you can see that there's considerable tumble home from the bottom up to the top. That's part of the drum-like profile. We have circular satination across the profiles. Satin is the dominant treatment here. You can see there are some well-utilized polished highlights like jewelry, not dominant. So satination, a few polished highlights. Then we have a chaptering that runs all the way around the exterior of the bezel, and we have the name Louis Vuitton, 12 letters set on a media blasted base. So we have polish, we have satin, and we have media blast all on the same case. Rotating around to the crown, you can see it is a drum in miniature, as the profile of the case is also that of the crown. Louis Vuitton monogram externally rolling around. Now you can see that the bezel has a slight flat plane and then a step up to the cambered sapphire. Taking a look at the dial, we may as well start out with a lume shot here because, well, it is a fairly well-lumed watch. And just so there is no doubt, I'll bring the gray dial over from besides. You can see I haven't charged either one of these up in particular. There's plenty of lume, no shortage there. In fact, maybe we'll jump from the blue to the gray as we return to the land of the living and the light comes back on. Okay, taking a look at the dial, the first thing you'll note is that there is a lot of nuance. Outboard, we have a track for reading, if you wish, the minutes. At 5-minute stations, we have recessed and polished hour indices. So every 5 minutes or 1 hour, you could see we have a fluted and polished recess. It's a cleft. It's a V-shaped profile that's mirrored internally and contrasts effectively As we have the applique indices and numerals rising above the dial, so do we have these serrations cut into the profile. Now the profile outboard is satinated with a sort of media blast type of finish, and the individual appliques, they are made of gold to resist oxidation or tarnish over time. So they're going to look brand new no matter how old the watch. And then as we move inboard, you can see that there's one chaptering, one large polished chaptering formed by the stepped minute track outboard. Then we have another step and polished chaptering separating the outer dials from the inner dial. The inner dial has a curtain-like vertical satination, and then we have a small second with a concentric pattern internally. We'll bring over the blue dial once more so you can get a good look at that. You can see that the finish is exactly the same, but the color is different, and the color at center is lighter than the color at the periphery. We have the same type of treatment, the same materials are used. You can see that the hands are partially skeletonized to create a greater impression of lightness overall and to open up the dial, and it really does do that. We have Louis Vuitton Paris up at the top to remind you that that is the Maison, founded in 1854, responsible for what you see here. And then we have Fab en Suisse. Now this is a reference to two things. One, La Fabrique Du Temps, which is the company behind the conception of Louis Vuitton watches, but also this specific badging, as opposed to Swiss made, was often used on high quality mid-century modern dress watches back in the 1950s and the 1960s. This is a little bit of a nod to antiquity and a lovely and romantic one. Flip it all over. Lots to see on the reverse side. If you love movements, you're going to love this. This is the Louis Vuitton caliber LFT-023. Now, it was conceived in conjunction with Le Cercle des Horlogers, and that is a Neuchâtel-based company that took La Fabrique Du Temps' vision for this movement and executed the result. So it's an automatic winder with a 22 karat gold micro-rotor, a 50-hour power reserve, a 4 hertz beat rate, and impressively, it has gone through the Geneva Chronometric Observatory trials pursuant to the ISO 3159, which is the international statute that underpins innumerable different chronometry certificates around the world, including the COSC. The ISO 3159 is a comprehensive battery. Of course, Geneva Chronometric Observatory undertaking the certification of these movements for the new tambour. And this is Louis Vuitton and this watch, the first to certify by the Geneva Chronometric Observatory. So lots to love. In terms of accuracy, it should run no worse than -4 + 6 seconds per 24 hours. Now you can see that the watch has several different finishes here. Let's talk about some of the little inside jokes. You can see that we have a repeating LV monogram cut into the micro-rotor. And then if you look, you can see the ratchet wheel atop the barrel actually has another variant of the LV monogram, as you'll see on their travel trunks and leather goods. So this is a rather sophisticated type of finish that also references the brand at hand. Now, in terms of detailing, we have engine turning on the base plate with a lovely overlapping perlage. You can see all screw heads have been black polished. I'll do my best to turn this over so you can see it from another angle. Let's see, can I bring this in? Yeah, I can get a little bit closer. You can see the 31 jewel movement features triple finished bridges. They're beveled on their outermost faces, and then there's a raised satin channel around the edge of the media blasted centers. So all of this is really well detailed, and you can see the collaboration between Fabrique Du Temps and Le Cercle des Horlogers has created a beautiful movement, and actually you may recognize it from an earlier 2023 release, which was the Voyager skeleton, and that debuted this fundamental movement architecture, which is going to be Louis Vuitton's first three-hand automatic manufacture caliber, and it represents the company's commitment to watchmaking, not just style, not just fashion, but also the nitty-gritty of engineering what's inside, because as we know, as watch enthusiasts, it's really what's inside that counts. Some elements that I really like, you can see they've used clear sapphires rather than synthetic rubies. It's the same material, corundum, still exceptionally hard. It's just that without the aluminum oxide, you don't get the redness, you don't get the violet, and that works better with the grayscale monotone of the movement. So you have those clear sapphires, most evident on the capstone of the balance staff. You can also see the use of Edelkrone on the balance for fine adjustment of beat error, and the rate. So I love to see that because that usually portends a watch that runs really well. Now let's put it on my wrist. You've heard a lot about what's inside, what's outside. I'm going to do a wrist shot with each one of these, and you're going to get the best of what Louis Vuitton is offering in 2023. And I think it's really important to remember that, again, this is a prototype. It's been through media hands. It will be through more media hands, so it's a little bit beaten up. It looks great, but when you buy the watch, it will look even better. Now, I think you could wear this easily on a wrist as small as 14 centimeters circumference, and you're going to find that the watch easily slips underneath the cuff. This is considered to be an all-arounder. It's neither strictly a sports watch nor strictly a dress watch. It'll function as either, and I really do think that in an era when women are more and more into mechanical watchmaking, this is really a nice unisex option because of the way the lugless case wears. So this is the new for 2023 Louis Vuitton Tambour, and I'm just thrilled to be able to present it to you first. A watch that's super comfortable with a fluid, almost organic kind of bracelet profile. As you can see, there's more than meets the eye initially to this bracelet, as the individual links are they're convex across their top, but if you look very carefully, they're concave across their bottom. So it forms a natural arc as it follows the contours of your wrist. Now, if you want to learn more, please reach out to me. You know how to reach me. I'm Tim Mosso. If you have more interest in these or any Louis Vuitton watches, again, I would love to hear from you. Links and email in the description below. Time out, Tim out, Louis Vuitton out, and thanks for logging on.